7. Phone conversation between Mae and Edith. Edith. Hello? Mae. Edie? Edith. Yeah, can you hear me? Mae. Yeah, it's not a great connection though. Edith. I'm at a payphone, outside the mental hospital. Mae. Oh. Edith. Well? Mae. Well, what? Edith. Aren't you going to ask me about Mom? Mae. No, I know about Mom. Edith. Do you? Well, it's worse than in the letters. Much worse. She doesn't seem like herself anymore, and they cut her hair. Mae. Her hair? Edith. Yeah, it looks horrible. And that's not all they did to her. But you probably know about that, since you're such a genius. Mae. I have to go. Edith. She asked about you, of course. It was the only thing she asked. Certainly didn't ask me how I was doing. Mae. Dad's waiting downstairs. I have to go. Mae. One time, when Dad took me on a picnic by the duck pond in Central Park, I decided that I would have him to myself, and I wouldn't share him with Mom. Sitting on the plaid, moth-eaten blanket, I let Dad feed me dried figs and dates, and olives stuffed with almonds. I found the textures of these foods revolting, but I ate them and smiled my mom smile, swallowing them quickly so they barely even grazed my tongue. After I had sampled everything in the picnic basket, Dad looked at me with quivering anticipation, as though this was my cue. Cue for what exactly, I wasn't sure. He must have felt that something was amiss. I sat like Mom, stared out at the pond like Mom, touched my hair as she would have, hummed a song I'd heard her hum before, but none of it was right. He was restless. He could sense that I was an imposter. He was waiting for me to do something, but as myself, I didn't know what it was. I sighed. I stretched. I lay back down and sat up. None of this was what he wanted from me. His mouth was pursed in frustration. I was doing the same thing I had been doing. How did he know that I wasn't her? My eagerness to please only irritated him. Finally, he said very quietly, almost inaudibly, under his breath, "Tell me that you don't love me, that I'm a bore, a mistake, that you should have never come." I did not want to say or even think these things. I felt humiliated. My love must have meant very little if he was willing to contaminate it with Mom's cruelty. But I couldn't say no to him. I'd do whatever it was he needed, and so I let Mom's tentacles tighten around my throat and force those words out of me. "I don't love you. You're a bore, a mistake. I never should have come." He wanted me to hurt him, so I did. I said all that he told me to, and more. And with each terrible thing that came out of me, I felt myself inflating bigger and bigger, until I was the size of a float in a parade, and he was cowering in front of me. I had never before felt this kind of excitement. I was both omnipotent and completely out of control. My skin was on fire. I couldn't breathe. Amanda. I was on my way to visit Dennis's old high school when, by pure luck, I spotted him and Mae spreading out a blanket by the edge of the pond in Central Park. I rented a paddle boat and tried to float by them casually, but they were so engrossed in each other that they didn't see me waving. I made several loops around the pond, but each time I passed, they didn't look up. I could have called to them, but I knew that I needed to tread lightly. There are only so many times you can plausibly run into a person. I turned around and began to tread back to the boathouse when I heard shouting. Their idyllic picnic had in an instant transformed into a fight. His daughter looked wild, clawing and kicking him while he tried to fend her off. I jumped from my boat and ran to them through the shallow water. Dennis's face was bleeding. They both seemed dazed when I pulled her off of him, and then she took off running. Dennis looked at me, but I don't think my presence even registered. He staggered after her, leaving behind all their belongings. I called out to him, but he didn't turn around. Later that evening, I came over with Rose to return the picnic basket. The house was in disarray. I remember the cat's litter box had overflowed, and those dusty pebbles were scattered through the living room. It was pretty early, but Mae was asleep, snoring. I washed all the dishes while Rose and Dennis talked. "She'll stay out of your way. She wants to help you write your book," I heard Rose say. And when Dennis tried to protest, she wouldn't hear of it. "Stop being so selfish. Stop it. You owe that girl a home. Look at this place." He promised he'd hire a house cleaner, but Rose wouldn't budge. Dear Rose, sweet Rose. I don't know what would have happened without her intervention. New York Times Book Review. September 7th, 1980. Cassandra Speaks by Dennis Lomack. Page 395. By this point, our culture has become inured to the mating rituals of hippies, but Lomax has found a new way to make his readers squirm. In his latest effort, Cassandra Speaks, Gregor, a cuckolded revolutionary, is tortured by his young wife, Cassandra. We're back in the South from bonfires, but 2 decades later. As the naïf transforms into a vamp, Gregor transforms into a ghost, literally, of the man he once was. The mixture of fantastical and prosaic has certainly been done before. Kafka. But not quite like this. In one scene, Gregor watches as Cassandra picks up a malcontent with a ravaged face in a bar. Gregor follows them to the man's apartment inside a seedy house on stilts, a flood zone equivalent of the Baba Yaga's hut atop Chicken Feet, and watches through the window as the ugly stranger makes love to his wife. The apartment has no furniture, only an enormous red paper umbrella, the kind of thing you would find in a tropical drink or in a bordello, hanging upside down from the ceiling lamp and casting a pink glow on the copulating bodies. Yet, it is the scene that immediately follows this, of Cassandra and Gregor walking home together, that's even more unsettling. The tenderness between the two of them has its own violence. It is this very tenderness that prompts Gregor's transformation into a ghost. Once a ghost, Gregor gives up his own earthly pleasure in order to possess his wife's body and force her to have relations with others, so as to experience these infidelities with her. Gregor's possession of his wife seems a clear metaphor to the writing process itself, where Lomax inhabits the minds of each of his characters and is forced to experience life through them, possess them. Maybe the act of writing forces empathy, but it does little to mollify his deep rage. Therapy Notes for Marianne McLean. May 4th, 1997. 3rd session in a row in which Marianne refuses to speak. I asked, how is she feeling? Is there anything she would like to discuss? Silence. The new medication has side effects. Bloated face, waxy and gray skin, unpleasant twitching. Between that and what she did to her hair, chewed it off with her teeth, according to the nurses. Her stay here is negatively impacting her appearance. However, this doesn't mean she isn't getting better. Improvement is rarely linear. I read to her from a transcript of an earlier session, one in which she was more forthcoming. My father never talked about my mother. It made him too sad. She died so suddenly, a defect in her heart. I never asked him because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want him to think that he hadn't been enough for me, because he had. He had been enough. Dennis had this idea that having children would replace the void left by my father's death. But, of course, it just dug 2 more holes. I asked her if she would care to expand on this. She shook her head. Maybe she could write a poem about it. I offered her a pen and paper, but she didn't move. We sat the rest of the hour in silence. When our time was up, I told her that if she wanted to get better, she'd have to start working harder. Then, finally, she speaks. She said she did not want to get better, and that if she wanted to be dead, she should have the right. I cleared her of this misconception. She does not have the right. Not in the state of Louisiana. May. Then, one day, Amanda was back. She would take care of me, Dad said. Can you imagine? That lank-haired ghoul ministering to my needs? I tried to protest, but Dad wouldn't hear of it. He was getting to a point in his novel that required his full attention, and Amanda had offered, very generously, to make sure everything else ran smoothly. Everything else being me. She made herself indispensable. She made him lunch from recipes Rose gave her and left it by his door, cleaned and fixed things around the house, and took me to my photography classes. Most importantly, she made herself scarce when Dad needed me to be Marianne. They must have had some sort of understanding. Otherwise, Amanda was always in the apartment, making me feel self-conscious as I sat on the floor outside Dad's room, waiting for him to open the door. Mae had begun to feel as much of a performance as Marianne. I sat there, posed in a patch of sunlight, playing with the cat, the embodiment of sweetness and innocence. When Dad came out to use the bathroom, or put his empty lunch tray on the counter, he would pat my head, or say a few kind words, but he only really noticed me when I was Marianne. Though I was expected to keep Mae and Marianne separate, after the picnic, certain things from Marianne began to bleed into me in ways I couldn't control. I kept returning to that moment of Dad, down on his knees. I would find myself thinking about the look on his face, which I now recognize to be a combination of arousal and despair. At the time, I couldn't have articulated this, but thinking about it made me slightly nauseous and excited. My heart would start racing, and I'd find myself doing things that I didn't understand to relieve the strange pressure building inside me. I'd press myself against the doorknob or the lip of the dresser and rock back and forth. I had no frame of reference for what I was doing. I was so sexually innocent, I'd never even kissed a boy. And yet, when Amanda caught me humping the dresser, I knew to feel ashamed. I'd blushed and pretended I had been dancing. In the evenings, Amanda would go back to whatever hole she'd crawled out of. Dad would sit in his room, typing, and I would lie in bed, feeling Mom's lust descending on me like dread. I began to have dreams in which I was Mom, and Dad was doing the things to me that he did to her in his books. In these dreams, he was a blurred hybrid of himself as I knew him, and himself from the old photographs I'd seen. So much of my art is about this subject, and yet I still find honesty difficult. I said dreams, but that's not really what they are. I was awake. I said dreams because it felt so much outside of my control. Just like if I say that this lust belonged to Mom, and if I think of it as hers, as this external force, it wouldn't have been mine. Edith, 1997. It's strange seeing my old neighborhood from the window of the truck. I watch in a daze as we drive past a couple kids running through a sprinkler. One slips and falls, starts to cry. The others keep playing like nothing happened. How can Mae be so calm when Mom is rotten in there? Literally rotten. Even if you can't smell it, you feel it. The line from Mom's letter about the molecules from the hospital becoming part of her. That woman screaming on the second floor is in me. And Mom's roommate, her dead skin cells and spit cells, they're in me too. Can Charlie tell that I've been contaminated? Charlie breaks the silence. So, how was she? He finally asks. Not good. As soon as I say it, I feel like I've betrayed her. Why am I telling him anything? He will probably just leave me. Why would he stick around? But not bad either. She's definitely not crazy, not like the other people in there. She can just be selfish sometimes. He nods. Why is he nodding? Not selfish. That's not what I meant, I say. Well, killing yourself is a selfish thing to do. What is he talking about? I move my hand away from his. He's acting like he knows us, but he doesn't. He doesn't know anything. And she didn't kill herself. If she had killed herself, she would be dead. I'd rather you didn't talk about my mother, I say. He apologizes and tries to put his hand back, but I don't let it near me. It's so rough. I can't believe I was just touching it. I can't believe yesterday those freckled, bony fingers were inside of me. They twitch now in his lap. How vile. You can let me out here. I open the door before he stops all the way. Someone's car is parked by the side door. An old black Honda. Strange. It must be the Duprees. The dad is a mechanic, and they have a constant rotation of cars they need to park off the street. Is that yours? I hear Charlie's voice behind me. No, a neighbor's. I'm about to get the spare key, but something catches in the corner of my eye. Rope. Rope hanging from a branch in the oak tree. And attached to the rope, a tire. A swing. What's wrong with me panicking like that at the sight of a swing? But where did it come from? It's not ours. Who put it there? Also the Duprees? They have 2 boys, but why wouldn't they put it in their own damn tree? What are you doing? Charlie asks. He's holding my bags, standing by the side door. Nothing. I let go of the tire, go get the spare key hidden behind a rock under the back porch. I don't bother to explain why I had lied about the spare key the other night, and he doesn't ask. I can't tell at first what's wrong. The smell inside the house makes me uneasy. It smells like Vicks Vapor Rub and fish. What could we have left out to make it smell this way? Charlie follows me up the side steps into the kitchen. Our things are there, but they've been rearranged. What the fuck? The big glass jars on the counter, where I kept rice and beans, now have, I don't even know what. Dried mushrooms? What? Charlie says. What's wrong? I open the cabinets, and they're full of packaged food. Not our food. The writing on them is in Greek or something. This isn't our stuff, I say. Did I go into the wrong house? The houses on our street are similar. Are we on the wrong street? A parallel street? Of course not. That's ridiculous. I go into the living room. The green couch is out of place, and there's a baby pen. A baby lives here now? The carpet still holds the dents from where the couch legs used to be. The room feels off balance. It's more than just the couch. What is it? A little boy appears at the bottom of the stairs. I shriek in surprise, and this scares him because he shrieks too. Who are you? Why are you in my house? I ask him. Don't yell at him, Charlie says uneasily. I wasn't yelling. A woman, wide-eyed, comes down the stairs, yanks her son away from us. She shouts upstairs at someone in a phlegmy language I don't recognize. A man comes down, buttoning his shirt. "Why are you here?" I ask them. "This is my house."
"My house,"
the man says. "This is my house," I repeat.
"We have lease,"
he says. The woman hesitates, then comes to me. She's holding the cordless phone in her hand like it's a gun. I don't understand what is going on at all. She tries to talk to me, but the only word I understand is hospital. She keeps saying, Doreen. Doreen. Of course Doreen is behind this. Giving my house away to strangers. Give me the phone. I grab the cordless out of her hands and call Doreen's house. Doreen picks up on the 5th ring. "Doreen, what the fuck?" "Excuse me," she says. She sounds like I woke her up. "It's Edith. I'm at my house, but it seems you've given it away." "You're what?" "I'm in my house." "Jesus, Edith, who told you to do that? Get out of there." "It's my house." Why does this even need to be said? "Not right now, it's not. I rented it out. How do you think your mama's paying for the hospital? You get out." I turn my back away from Charlie and that stupid family. "Doreen, I swear to God." "You swear to God?" "I swear to God. I told you not to come. They can sue you now. It's the last thing we need. Get over here this instant." I hang up. The squatters look at each other.
"Leave, or we call police,"
the man says again. I hand him back the phone and turn back to stare at my living room. It's the gourds. That's what's missing. The shelf with the gourds that holds my grandfather's ashes. What did these people do with them? "What did you do with the gourds?" I ask them. I point to the place on the wall where they used to be and gesture a gourd shape with my hands. If they threw them out or damaged them in any way, I will break everything in this room. The woman looks confused. The man is on the phone, presumably with the police. Then I spot a cardboard box in the corner, my grandfather piled carelessly in there. I grab it and elbow my way past the couple out the front door. Charlie starts the car, and I inspect each gourd to make sure none of them were damaged. When I was little, Mom used to stand in front of them and talk to my grandfather, sing to him. I shake one to make sure the ashes are still in there, and a small gray cloud escapes from the little hole drilled at the top. A few specks settle on my lips and shirt.
"What's that?"
Charlie asks. He looks a little too exhilarated, like this is another of his adventures and not my busted life. "Doreen, do you know the story with those damn gourds? After her divorce, Marianne got all giddy, dumped her children on me, and took off to Honduras with some little man with a unibrow. She said he was Trotsky's grandson or some shit. Anyone with half a brain could tell he'd be bad news. Shifty, dirty, not much to look at. I don't care whose grandson he was. I remember he fainted a lot, too, which Marianne, of course, found fascinating. Anyway, he was a visiting scholar or something at Tulane, which impressed Marianne. And the two of them took off for Central America without giving a thought to how it would affect anyone around them. Edith was terrified of being abandoned. When Marianne dropped them off at my house, Edith sat on Marianne's foot to try to keep her from leaving. She broke Marianne's toe, but that didn't stop Marianne. Nope. Marianne hobbled off with her broken toe and ugly boyfriend and one-way ticket to Honduras. A couple weeks went by, and I finally got a call from her. That guy disappeared. She was rambling about some sort of international conspiracy, though it was pretty obvious to me that he just got sick of her and left. Took her money, too. All she had was a hotel room full of those stupid gourds. Lord knows where she got them. She was telling me she was going to use them to build a monument to her father, or open up a little store where she'd sell gourds and poems. Big ideas. Cuckoo stuff. I paid for her return ticket myself. I was having a hard time with my husband, and I had enough to worry about. Edith wet her bed, and Mae was always watching me. Oh, it got on my nerves. There was nowhere to put them other than in my son's room, and then he was forced to sleep on the floor of my room in a sleeping bag. It was disruptive. Of course, none of this was their fault, and I probably could have been kinder to them. If my mother had been alive, she would have been disappointed in me. The girls only stayed a few weeks. Marianne came home, still limping, her suitcases full of gourds, looking happier than she had any right to be, talking about all of her plans and making a whole lot of empty promises. And then, deja vu. Edith shows up at my house with those damn gourds again. I could have smashed each one of them. I'd told her on the phone, stay in New York. But she's a stubborn girl, always was. When she got something in her head, good luck getting it out. She didn't give one thought to the fact that my brother was staying with me. He had stage 3 pancreatic cancer, and I was working extra shifts to help him pay for treatment. No, It didn't occur to her that I had bigger problems than Marianne. Mae. Instead of being with Dad, I had to waste most of my days going on dopey errands with Amanda. Before leaving the house, she would brush my hair with unnecessary roughness. I was too old to have my hair brushed, and yet I sat there and let her. Oh, how I hated her. The feeling was mutual. When we were out of sight of Rose or Dad, she wouldn't bother to pretend. I remember once at the grocery store, she bought me children's cookies. They had garish faces on them, vanilla on one side, chocolate on the other, and a cream filling that came out through the eye holes. I remember feeling deeply insulted. It didn't even occur to me that it could be a peace offering, because it wasn't. It was her way of saying that I was a stupid, insignificant child. I tried to get back at her by taking pictures of her. In my photography class, I would print the least flattering ones in triplicate. At home, I would spread them out on the floor and hack them up with scissors, presumably for a collage that I never bothered to assemble. She'd sit nearby, watching me with that impassive face of hers. She never said anything about the reenactments. I had naively assumed that it was a secret, but she must have known. She must have been dying with jealousy when she went to the antique stores to pick up the objects that Dad and I would use. With Amanda, it was a game, I see now. I couldn't possibly win. I was just a child. Edith, 1997. Doreen heats up a half-eaten rotisserie chicken from the store and some canned peas. Charlie stutters for a long time through his name. She shakes his hand but looks over his shoulder at me while she's doing it. "Where'd you find him?" she says. "He's my neighbor in New York." "How old are you?" she asks him. Like it's any of her business. 25. "Doreen," I say, before she can sidetrack us with more of this nonsense. "How long are those Greek people going to be staying in my house?" "They're not Greek. They're Ukrainian. And they signed a 2-year lease. He's working at the hospital. We're lucky to have found them." "And where is Mom supposed to go when she gets better?" Charlie's gaze darts back and forth between Doreen and me. Why is he still here? "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Edith," Doreen says. And there's the edge back in her voice, the edge she gets whenever she has to deal with our family's shit. "You don't want to deal with it? Don't deal with it. You aren't doing me any favors." "I had to pull a lot of strings to get her into St. Vincent's," Doreen is saying. "If anyone can help her, it's them. But they can only do so much. And, well, you visited her. You saw how she is." My bottom lip starts to quiver, so I bite down on it hard. Doreen is one of those people who think they're being honest, when really, they're just being mean. "I don't think you ever understood her," I say. That's as far as I dare take it with Doreen. She snorts and clears our dishes off the counter. She and my mother have always seemed more like sisters than friends. When I was little, Mom would have her over for coffee, and I remember feeling embarrassed because Mom was always holding on to Doreen's hand, begging her not to leave so quickly. And Doreen was always pulling her hand away and looking at it, as if Mom had left a goopy stain on it. How dare she? It's Doreen that should have been embarrassed for being such a bitch. "Well, where am I supposed to stay, since you stole my house?" I say it. As soon as it comes out, I regret it. Doreen lets whatever she's washing clatter in the sink. She turns around, and I brace myself because she's about to slap me with her soapy hand. It wouldn't be the first time. But she doesn't slap me. Instead, she pulls me into her chest and holds me there. Her boobs are so big, she gets all her bras from special catalogs, and I can't help it. I cry into them like they're pillows. "Shh," she says. "Shh, baby. Poor baby." I hate how comforting it feels. I hate that Charlie is watching all of this, gaping at me. Why hasn't he left already? I pull away and wipe my eyes on my sleeve. I've left a big wet spot over Doreen's heart. "Does your daddy know you're here?" she asks. "He doesn't have a say in the matter," I say. Doreen shrugs, already growing distant, like that hug has used up her quota of warmth for the week. "Well, you can stay here for a couple days, but that's all. And don't even think you'll get to share a room with your boyfriend," she says as she's already walking away, heading up the stairs. Charlie's not my boyfriend. He opens his mouth like he's about to say something comforting to me. His pity is about the last thing I can handle. "I'll see you later," I say, and quickly squeeze past him. Marcus's house is a 45-minute walk from here. I need to be around someone who actually knows me. I don't turn around, but I know Charlie is following me. What's his problem? I break into a jog, cutting through people's yards. When I get to Beau Artes Ave, I look back, and he's not there. I feel disappointed. No, that's stupid. I feel mostly relieved.
Walter. I ran into Dennis Lomack and the girl at the Turkish Baths on East 10th Street. I recognized them immediately, though he had no idea who I was. My wife was his therapist when he first moved back to New York. She's a genius at unblocking creatives, but she counted Lomac among her few failures. My wife never discussed her clients, but her practice was on the ground floor of our brownstone, and the vents carried sound. I was curious about the author at first. I'd expected him to be more interesting based on his books, a man of action. Instead, he would cry and carry on about his ex-wife. It was practically all he could talk about. That, and sometimes about how badly he felt leaving his daughters. But tell me, what kind of man abandons his children in the first place? Particularly with a woman who, by his own account, was so unstable. Rather than cry to my wife about his creative blockages, why didn't he do something? So all those years later, when I saw him in the swimming pool with his daughter, I thought, how nice. Maybe in the end he came through for someone. The girl was a teenager, but she looked young. I remember she was wearing an old-fashioned-looking bathing cap. She was on her back, and he was holding her, pulling her back and forth through the water. He seemed completely focused on her. At first, their display touched me. He was a gruff guy, so it was sweet to see him doting on this girl. But then as I swam closer, I began to feel unsettled. The girl's eyes were shut tightly as he pulled her through the water. They were murmuring to each other. Though I couldn't make out what they were saying, I could sense the intensity. I remembered the abrupt way he'd ended the sessions with my wife, how for weeks she would cry in the bathroom, where she thought I couldn't hear her, and pick fights with me over nothing. His books would be disturbed on our bookshelves, so I know she'd been reading them. He talked about himself as a toxic force in other people's lives, despite all his best intentions. Maybe this was true. He certainly didn't do my marriage any favors. I got out of the pool, went to one of the sauna rooms, had a massage, the kind where they beat you with birch sticks, came back to the pool for one last dip, and found Dennis and his daughter in the same exact place, in the same positions. I hadn't thought much of the odd encounter until I saw his daughter's piece in the Whitney Biennial. It made me ill to know that I had probably witnessed one of their rituals.
Mae. I didn't know that this would be the last scene Dad and I ever staged. Dad watched me from his window as I walked back and forth in front of his building in the rain, holding a small, battered suitcase that Amanda had bought a week earlier to his specifications. I didn't know what was in it because it was locked, but it was heavy despite its size and covered in old travel stickers. That morning, Dad had laid out my clothes for me. A pale yellow blouse with cloth buttons and a navy skirt that smelled like mothballs. I walked in circles up and down 7th Ave, around the block and down the alley. I felt disoriented, as though I was seeing the city for the first time. When the rain got stronger, the rats scurried out from under the dumpsters and ran for higher ground. Rain came down in gusts, tearing through the drain pipes. My soaked blouse turned see-through, and the wool skirt smelled like a wet dog. Each time I passed the front entrance to the apartment building, the doorman would try to run after me and give me an umbrella, but I studiously ignored him until eventually he gave up. I don't know for sure if Dad was watching me or not. Several times I glanced up at his window, but I couldn't tell. Maybe the idea of me out here was enough for him, or maybe he was walking from room to room, from window to window, tracking my every movement. Hours went by. The rain eventually eased up into a drizzle, and then I came inside. The doorman avoided eye contact as I waited for the elevator. He mopped up the puddles I'd made without looking up. When I got to Dad's apartment, I pressed my forehead against the front door, clutching the suitcase to my chest and shivering. I remember thinking, something is about to happen. I was thinking it both as Mom and as myself. I was thinking, my life is about to change.
Charlie. Doreen was kind, but also suspicious of me, which was good, I think. What normal person wouldn't have been in that situation? After Edie left, Doreen talked to me like I knew a whole lot more about the situation than I did. I played along. She said that after Marianne's dad died, Marianne lost it and never got it back. I asked her what she meant by it. Her sanity? Doreen said no, not quite. Or yes, but that there were so many ways to be insane, it wasn't really saying all that much. All she knew was that Jackson's death broke something in Marianne. Her decency, maybe. Then Doreen sighed and said that she didn't know anymore what the right thing to do was, that maybe if Marianne wanted to die, she should die. Then Doreen put her head on the table, and we sat like that for a while in silence. I didn't know Marianne yet, but I felt like I did because I'd read Dennis Lomac's novels. In those books, Marianne had seemed like the most fascinating and enchanting woman. But maybe Doreen was right. Maybe she wasn't particularly decent. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. Decency is something you value more as you get older. It makes sense that these were the terms Doreen saw things in, since Doreen was the kind of woman gravity held down to earth with a stronger grip than most. When she sat up, her face looked completely calm. I thought maybe she'd been crying, but no, she hadn't been. She said she needed to leave for a half shift at the hospital and told me to make myself comfortable on the couch. Gave me a remote for the TV. After she left, I sat there for a while. I wasn't sure if I should go look for Edie since she had run out, or if I should give her space. Something between us had changed. I could sense that, though I was hoping it was temporary. I tried to watch the TV, but it had been years since I'd watched one, and I found all the shows difficult to follow. The actors had very similar faces and teeth and voices, and I had trouble telling them apart. Eventually, I turned it off and sat in Doreen's house in silence. After some time passed, I became aware of sounds coming from upstairs. I thought it was the wind at first, or maybe some kind of animal. When I climbed to the second floor, though, I realized it was a person moaning behind one of the closed doors. I stood for a while listening before I entered the room. A man was inside, lying in a hospital bed. He looked ancient, but he probably wasn't even old, just withered from illness. His eyes were open, but I don't think he could see me. His pupils were the size of quarters. He was moving his mouth and sounds were coming out, but they weren't words. "What do you want?" I kept asking him. I lit a cigarette and offered it to him, but he didn't seem to want it. He was agitated. So I sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. I had noticed the smell downstairs because of all the chemical air fresheners, but upstairs, after I finished my cigarette, I had to breathe through my mouth. I don't know if he was aware of my hand in his or not, but he eventually settled down, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, Doreen was standing in the doorway. I could tell she didn't like me being in there, so I left. I became an adventurer after my mother died. When you're forced to acknowledge mortality, you stop wasting time. Modesty, restraint, self-respect, all that is garbage. It's all ego. I don't have time for it. Nobody does. Even little children who have more time than anyone else, even they know better. I knew all this, but over the previous few months, I'd lost track of it. Being with that dying man clarified things for me. I might have just met Edie, but I loved her, and I'd do what I could to help her. I felt very alive. I got in the truck and drove to the mental hospital. I'd been so determined and had moved so swiftly that it hadn't occurred to me to get nervous until I was in the elevator. My reflection, distorted in the metal doors, made me look deranged, like I belonged there as a patient.
Mae. I knocked. Dad opened the door. He opened it right away, so he must have been waiting for me on the other side. We both stood completely still, the strange force field between us humming like an electric fence. "Marianne," he finally said. He needed to say that to frame what could happen next, to give me permission to be her and not Mae. And then I pulled his face towards mine, and I kissed him. He tasted like ash, an erupted volcano. His tongue was soft and warm. It was my first kiss. I don't know how long it lasted. It could have been minutes or hours. I lost all sense of time.
Marcus. Edie's departure had brought a certain amount of relief. I was deep in the closet, and having her around made me feel like I needed to prove my heterosexuality to everybody, including myself. I was able to have sex with her and even enjoy it on some level, but it made me feel empty and sad afterward. At the time, I blamed it on my Catholic guilt, but now I think it was because I could sense something about me was not right, but I just wasn't ready to deal with it. I remember that sinking feeling I got when Edie showed up on my front steps out of breath and raggedy, and I also remember feeling embarrassed for her. It was the same way I felt when I would go over to her house and her mother wasn't feeling well, and the house was dirty, and her mom was dirty, and her sister was round-eyed and silent. I remember one time when we got there, and all their things were in the front yard, and her mom was sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor, and Edie made me help carry Marianne up the stairs and bring all their things back inside. I remember thinking it was strange that Edie wasn't more embarrassed. If it were me, I would have died. But that was the wonderful thing about Edie. She was loyal. My parents were completely normal, boring, but any time my mom said anything to me in public, I would turn beet red. I was so self-conscious, always thinking that people were looking at me and judging me. And then there was Edie. Her mother was a mess on the floor and a pile of cereal, and it didn't even occur to her that I would be petty enough to think less of her. My parents felt so sorry for Edie that they were going to offer her to stay with us while we finished out high school. They believed in doing good works, and I think my mom sensed my gayness and hoped that a live-in girlfriend would help stem the tide. The idea of Edie there for the rest of junior and senior year, I could not even handle it. I got into a big fight with my parents about it, and they were very taken aback because they thought I would want her to stay. I lied to them and said that Edie was happy in New York with her father, despite the constant despondent messages she would leave on my family's answering machine. When it became clear that I would have to do better than that to discourage my parents, I told them that Edie was addicted to heroin and that I didn't feel safe with her drug dealer friends. My parents are typical New Orleanians, and they were all, let the bon temps roule, and our back house was frequently full of underage drunk kids. But they've always been terrified of me using drugs, so that was what it took. I feel guilty now, but it had been an issue of survival. I was doing what I felt I had to.
Edith, 1997. I have the spins. I hold on to Marcus's elbow, but he is walking fast. He is walking ahead of me. He doesn't turn his head towards me as I'm talking to him. "Marcus," I say. "Marcus, have you missed me?" These last 2 months have been shit. I am looking at his ear as I talk to him because he doesn't turn around to look at me. "Marcus," I say. "Marcus." The hedge of the nearby house scratches my arm. I lose my balance. My knee is bleeding. "Ew, Edie. God, why did you get so drunk? Sober up. You're going to get everyone in trouble. Stop pulling on me." His face is in my face. He is going to kiss me. He is not going to kiss me. He pulls me up, and I am on the ground again. It's so quiet. I just realized how quiet it is out here after New York. All I hear is the blood beating in my ears. No cars or people. "Edie, get up." I close my eyes, but that makes the spinning worse. I open them. I am very scared. I am suddenly very scared. My mother's face was there when I closed my eyes. Her pupils are so black that they are holes. You look in them and you see the emptiness inside. I think, my mother. I think my mother needs to come back. I think she is gone. I think she is not coming back. She is gone. I saw today. She's not going to come back. I thought I could make her, but I couldn't. I didn't save the part of her that mattered. That part was already gone. It was already gone because otherwise she wouldn't have done it. It wasn't an accident. I saw today that I am nothing. I am nothing because she is gone already. Has been gone. I say, Marcus. I try to say, Marcus, I am very scared. But the words aren't coming out. My throat is tightening and my chest too. I can't breathe. I can't. What is happening to me? My mother's neck, the scabs. This is how she must have felt hanging there. No air in her throat. Dizzy. Dizzy. Marcus's face is spinning and receding. He pulls loose and I fall. I don't know what happened. I can't see off to the side. Grass on my face. The sidewalk. It smells bad under me. And then the swell again in my chest. It burns my throat and splashes. Marcus is far away, walking back to his house. Marcus! I try to call again. But then everything contracts again. It contracts and it's so hot in my mouth. Hot pineapple juice barf. My nose is running. I crawl away from the mess I made. But the mess follows me because I am the mess. I sit up, slump forward, sit up. My face hits the grass. I sit up. I am empty and cold. Everything hot inside of me has come out. The sound, I realize now, is my teeth. They are chattering. It's not fair of Mae to have left me here like this. Why is she so slippery? And Marcus, too. He wants nothing to do with me. He did not look at me the way he used to. Maybe he was upset because I talked about Charlie. I tried to make him jealous. I will get up in a minute. Apologize to Marcus. My mother is receding already in my head, though I don't dare close my eyes again. I keep them open. Don't blink. Mae and I would play that game. Stare and stare until the tears rolled down our cheeks. Mae always won. If she decides not to blink, she won't blink until her eyes shrivel up and fall out. Did Mae know? Did Mae know I would see what I saw? Is that why she didn't come? I don't realize that I am staring at a truck until the window rolls down. Edie. Charlie comes out and pulls me up. I am steadier on my feet than I thought I would be, but tired and embarrassed. I'm sorry. I say so quietly that he doesn't hear me. He is drying me off with a towel. I lift my arms and he pulls my vomit-spattered shirt over my head. I am not wearing a bra. I pull off my pants and throw them into the bed of the truck. I am standing naked in the street. Charlie tries to cover me in a towel, but it falls and I don't pick it up. He is the only one who is nice to me. Why have I been pushing him away? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I say. And then I see a shadow, something move inside the truck.
Chapter 8. Charlie. I was prepared for complications. I would have bound and gagged a security guard in the stairwell if the occasion called for it, but it didn't. This was a hospital, not a jail. I got past the nurses and orderlies and doctors without a problem. As an urban explorer, I have a lot of experience going into places I don't belong. The key is moving with confidence, having a neutral facial expression and avoiding eye contact. The last part is particularly important for me, as my stutter makes it difficult to pass unnoticed if I need to start conversing. I took the elevator to the top floor and worked my way down. There were no doors on the rooms, or if there were, they were all propped open. It didn't take me long to find Marianne. She was sitting on the edge of her bed. I recognized her from Edie's description, recognized the silk scarf on her neck and the hairstyle Edie had been so distressed about. I didn't linger in the doorway, as this is the sort of thing that draws attention to itself. Instead, I came in, reached out my hand to her, and she took it. She followed me out without questions or hesitation. Her roommate called after us, but quietly. Marianne seemed to be moving as though in a dream. I don't know if she fully understood who or where she was. She climbed into the truck, sat primly. She seemed zonked. I began to introduce myself, but my words clung to each other in my mouth. She didn't turn to look at me, but hit the dashboard with her palm as if to say, "Drive!" So I did. The character of Cassandra was the basis of all my early sexual fantasies. But more than that, she had created the very framework for my sexual desire. Gregor and Cassandra had a romance for the ages, even in the later books, even when it was clear that things would end badly for everybody. Rather than being expansive, their love seemed to condense further and further inward, a circle, then a spiral, then a point, ratcheting the whole thing tighter and tighter, until the spring popped and Marianne went flying halfway across the universe. What was it like to meet the woman who was the basis of all my sexual fantasies? I don't know. I never met her. Cassandra had existed for such a short moment on the pages of Dennis's books, burning fast and bright. The woman in my truck was the pile of ash left over.
Mae. As we kissed, I had the sensation that I was breaking apart. Dad's tongue slipped into a place inside of me that was already cracked and pried it open. I understand why in fairy tales, a kiss has the power to transform a frog into a person and bring the comatose to life. I would have stood there kissing him forever until I died, until I was nothing but a cloud of atoms. He was the one who pulled away. I remember his face, eyes bulged, lips rictusy and wet with spit. It was going too far for him. I was not who he wanted. I had never been her. I was a prop, no different from the golden binoculars or that little suitcase. The kiss must have reminded him of this.
Go change out of those wet clothes,
he said. His face was neutral, a little sad. When I reached for him, he took a step back. For a moment, he had been mine, and now he wasn't. My body was still buzzing as he walked into his room and shut the door. I couldn't bring myself to move. He began to type, fast and hard. It sounded like a firing squad, and I could feel every letter lodging inside of me like a bullet. I'm not sure exactly what happened after that. After I kissed my father, I lost my mind. Edith, 1997. Mom and I are lying in the front room of the shotgun on a nest I made from my laundry and a couple of blankets. The room is dark, except for the street light coming in through the broken shutters on the front window. In this light, Mom looks like herself. Her eyes are closed, and they don't budge, and her face doesn't look fat or yellow. It barely even looks puffy, and that'll go down. Whatever pills they were giving her that made her this way, that made her eyes swim, they will be out of her system soon. I'm so happy. I don't know how Charlie got her out, how he convinced her to leave. I don't care. He could have stabbed all the orderlies and doctors in that hospital, and I'd still be grateful. Whatever he did, it worked. Mom is curled up on me, asleep, with my hand pressed to her mouth. Her lips are chapped. I have some lip balm in my bag, but I'm worried that if I move, I might wake her, and then something could change. She could wake up and go back to how she was being in the hospital. So I stay still. I keep my eyes open as wide as they go, because when I close them, everything starts spinning. I'm still drunk, I guess, though I don't feel drunk. Charlie smiles at me from the kitchen doorway. There are 3 rooms between us, but I can smell the kielbasa he's frying. We bought it at a gas station. What does Mom think of Charlie? She must have liked him enough to leave with him. She didn't like Marcus. She never said that, but the way she said his name, sometimes I could tell. Marcus. Like the lash of a whip. God, he'd been such a dick. Each time I tried to talk to him, he had taken a step back from me, as if I was going to give him a disease. It makes me wish I had a disease, just so that I could give it to him. Preferably something with lesions. Why had I even gone to him when I had Charlie? It seems incomprehensible. My Charlie. I watch him lean away from the stove and flip what's in the pan. When it's ready, Charlie brings me a plate of sausage. He sits next to me on our pile of blankets. An indoor picnic. I'm nauseous, but hungry. I adjust my seat, careful not to wake Mom. Outside, it has started to rain. Charlie set up a metal bucket under a leak in the kitchen. We listen to the drops ping softly like a milk pail. The house belongs to the uncle of someone he knows in New York. We can stay here in the Marianne until it sells, but we have to clear our stuff out every morning when the real estate agent shows the place. Did you know, Charlie says, taking a slice of sausage off the plate, that these houses are called shotguns because if you shoot a shotgun through the front door, the bullet goes straight through the house and out the back? I don't think that's true, I say. Have you ever shot a shotgun? The shot scatters. I belch into my hand. He grins at me. How did he do it? I want to know. How did he get her out? He wipes something off my chin with his thumb and answers me before I even speak. I just went in there and got her, he whispers. Just like that, I whisper back. More or less. But what about the doctors and nurses and all that? He shrugs, looks down at my mother in my lap. Her eyes move under her eyelids back and forth, like she's reading. They were busy. And she just went with you? He nods. I take the last bite of sausage. She's getting better already. I hope that's true. I'll make it true. Charlie pulls my head towards his, presses our foreheads together. My outlaw. He finishes chewing and swallows, kisses me on the nose. The rain outside is getting stronger, lashing at the window, trickling into the bucket. Inside, we are warm and dry. Charlie and I are like the parents, and my mom is our baby. Together, we will nurse her back to health. Mae. It was irresponsible of Dad to encourage me as he did, but he didn't know. He couldn't have known what it would lead to. My mind cracked. Between the kiss and the fire, I remember only strange shards, jumbled bits. I was running a low-grade fever for days. I wasn't eating or sleeping. I was unwell. My mom took up most of the room in my chest, and what was left of me squeezed in the edges around her. It was like always being in a room with a very low ceiling, a coffin. I remember lying on the floor of my room, my cheek pressed to the cool wood, eye to eye with the cat as Amanda swept the floor around me. Do animals sense madness? Does it scare them? My arms were torn up with scratch marks as I tried to lure Cronus out from under the dresser, but even he wanted nothing to do with me. When Rose came over to dinner, Amanda tried to hide me away, bury me in blankets on the bottom bunk, but I crawled out to the table and joined them. Eating was incomprehensible. I watched what the others did and imitated them. It felt like I was chewing clumps of dirt. The food hurt my stomach. Dad didn't stop talking. I couldn't follow anymore what he was saying. He was at the other end of the table, but he was receding farther and farther away from me. I remember Amanda's face as she brayed at something he said. Rose laughed too. I'm losing him, I realized, and started to choke. He's not coming back to me ever again. He's so far away. Amanda hit me on the back, and a laugh, shriveled and tight, fell out of my mouth. After dinner, Amanda played the piano. She rolled her sleeves up with a flourish. Oh, how insufferable she was. I tried to climb onto Dad's lap on the couch, but he didn't let me. He shoved me off without even looking and asked Amanda to play another. The piano playing went on and on. I was the only one who noticed that her shoulder blades were jumping under the fabric of her shirt. Wing humps. She didn't turn around, but if she did, I knew that I would see her true face. After each song, Rose and Dad clapped. It was as though I didn't exist. I was beginning to wonder if maybe I didn't, if I was only a character inside one of Dad's books. But then I spotted the button from my yellow blouse glinting under the piano bench. I was still wearing that blouse, who knows how many days later. Amanda had tried to take it off of me, but I had bitten her. Seeing that button on the floor felt like proof. If I could lose a button, I must exist. Edith, 1997. I wake up with a splitting headache. Mom is gone. Where is she? She is already up. She and Charlie are sitting on milk crates in the backyard under the plantain tree, passing a cigarette back and forth. I watch them from the kitchen window as I rinse my mouth out in the tap. I come outside, and Mom stops talking and looks up at me like I'm interrupting. The morning sunlight is too much. A sharp pain pierces the inner corner of my eye. I rub it with one hand and my forehead with the other. Good morning, Mom says. I bury my head in her neck, the way I did when I was little. She tenses for a moment, then strokes my hair. You smell like a distillery, she says. If I lit a match, you'd burst into flames. Her voice is odd, words over-articulated. I drank too much, I say. I start to tell her about a dream I had where a doctor was ramming an ice pick into my eye, torturing me. But why? He was giving me a lobotomy. I trail off once I remember these details. Mom keeps stroking my hair, mechanically. She's not listening, or at least she doesn't acknowledge anything I've said. I was just telling Charlie about your grandfather. We'd come into the city for a crew de vue. He'd help build the floats. Going to that parade with Mom had always been my favorite part of Mardi Gras, my favorite part of the year. The fact that she hadn't done anything for it this year, that she hadn't even gone to watch the parade, I should have taken it as a sign. Charlie comes up and crouches next to me. You feeling okay? He asks me. I manage to sit up. Sure. I shield my eyes from the light. Let's go for a walk. Charlie goes to get me some sunglasses out of the truck. When he's out of earshot, Mom says, Ribbit, you need to take better care of yourself. The irony of this isn't lost on me. I'm fine. If I'm not around, I need to know that you're okay, that you aren't doing stupid stuff. But you are around, so I can be as stupid as I want. I put my hands in both her shoulders and stare into her eyes. It's a game we used to play when Mae and I were little. Mom looks away. She's watching Charlie in the truck. I keep staring, though, so finally she stares back. This is the game. We read each other's thoughts. Mae was better at it, but she hated playing. Okay, Mom says. Fine. I'll go first. I concentrate hard on her eyes, try to see what's there. You want coffee, I begin. She smiles because she always wants coffee. You're happy to be out of the hospital with me. You're thinking that you are feeling much better and that maybe what we need is to go on a trip. Something flickers in her eyes at this word, trip. And you're thinking about Mae, probably because you're always thinking about Mae. Mom rolls her eyes. You're too old to get jealous of your sister. Of course I think about her. She's not like you. She's more... Whatever. I cut her off. I don't want to talk about Mae. Your turn. Mom looks into my eyes, and I feel like she is reaching her long fingers into my brain and squeezing my thoughts, checking them for ripeness. My ears are ringing, so I try to think my thoughts loudly so she can hear each one above the din. You're thinking that you're having a nice time with your boyfriend. Your head hurts. You're thinking you shouldn't have drank so much last night. Shouldn't have drank at all. You're only 16. She's not even trying. I'm disappointed. Do it for real, I say, like you used to. Climb into my head. I grip her shoulders harder and stare at her more intensely. I can feel my eyes bulging with effort. Hey, she says to Charlie, trying to shake me off. You ready to go for a walk? Without looking away from her, I say, Charlie, can we have a minute? In my peripheral vision, he takes a step back. What am I thinking, Mom? I say again. How can she not hear? I'm thinking, thank God you're back. I'm thinking, don't go anywhere again. I'm thinking, stay this way. You're fine right now. Stay fine. I'm thinking, love me without all the stuff you put up. Love me without distance. No, she says. I'm done. She turns towards Charlie and smiles like a little bird, asks him for the rubber band around his wrist. She uses it to put her hair up, the way she wore it in the summers, off her neck, but the strands are too short and escape at weird angles. And she looks different than she used to. Her face droops like it's been stretched and then deflated. God, I've been selfish. The game was too much for her. She's still fragile. I shouldn't have pushed her. Now she'll withdraw even further. She strokes my arm and says, let's go for a walk, an adventure. And the way she says it, there's nothing wrong with it, but it fills me with despair because the real her has burrowed away from me. This is all just scaffolding. I try not to show my disappointment. I need to be agreeable, and then maybe she'll come back. May, 2012. Once, Mom and I were driving through the swamps near where her old house used to be. I was so tired. Nothing seemed real. The windows were down, and the humid night was inside the car. We looked like two ghosts, our white nightgowns flapping in the breeze. Suddenly, she stopped the car. There, illuminated by our headlights, lay a dead raccoon in the middle of the road. We watched as 3 birds of prey descended on its body and eviscerated it. The sound of their wings was deafening, a beating and flapping that stayed in my ears for days. This was the sound I was hearing as I watched Amanda and Dad on the couch, their knees touching. I couldn't make out what they were saying. Rose's face was in my face, obstructing my view. Her lips were moving. She was talking to me. Are you all right? I finally heard her ask. People only ask this when they know you aren't. Fine, I managed to say, but it wasn't convincing. Dad came over and put his palm against my forehead. I was so grateful for his touch. She's still burning up, he said. The 3 of them talked about me like I wasn't in the room. Rose wanted to take me to a doctor. I knew that if I left with her to the hospital, I would never come back. Dad finally extracted his hand from my grip and agreed to wait and see. Rose brought me a chalky pill and a glass of water. She tilted it for me as I drank it. She should lie down, she said. As Dad led me to my bed, Amanda turned, and there it was, her sharp, hooked beak, her round, unblinking eyes, and oily feathers. Nobody else seemed to see her for what she was. I tried to tell him, but none of the words came out. He tucked the blanket around my feet and closed the door. As I lay immobilized in Edie's bottom bunk, my fever gathering heat, I could hear the front door close behind Rose, and then the sound of Amanda, flying heavily through the small rooms. She squawked as she descended on my father. I could hear the sounds of her talons tearing open his belly, the slippery sounds as she pulled out the wet ropes of his intestines with her beak. Through the wall, I could hear him moaning. It took all of my strength to rise from the bed and crawl to them. I was ready to offer myself instead, but his door was locked. I was so weak. I know he must have carried me back to my room at some point in the night, because I woke up in my bed to him patting my sweat-soaked head and giving me another chalky pill to bring down my fever. He never loved Amanda. Even later, even after he married her. She was never anything more than a convenience. Edith, 1997. The bars have their doors propped open to air out from the night before. Stale smoke and booze and vomit waft faintly as we pass. Or is that smell coming from me? We stop outside the R bar. I've been here once before on Mardi Gras, I think. Charlie goes in to get a drink and Mom and I lean against the building and watch a boy ride back and forth on a bicycle with a girl balanced on the handlebars. I'm facing them, but watching Mom out of the corner of my eye. She's humming something quietly, eyes on the kids. Charlie lent her his clothes. Men's work pants, several sizes too big, and a shirt that used to belong to a gas station attendant named Maury. They make her look like a stranger. I don't like it. When I was little, she'd let me dress her. Well, not let. I'd have to dress her, I guess. But I didn't mind. She was like my big doll. I'd try to get Mae to help me pick out the outfits, but Mae never wanted anything to do with it. Mae was scared of Mom when Mom wasn't well. Mae was selfish like that. We can stop and get Mom some clothes in the quarter. Or, no, maybe it's best to just leave it. If the hospital is looking for her, Charlie's clothes can be her disguise. She does look like someone else in them. A character from Reality Bites or something. Charlie comes out with 3 Bloody Marys and to-go cups.
Hair of the dog,
Charlie says, handing me a cup, but Mom intercepts it. Hair of the dog, my ass, she says, and I laugh, and Charlie smiles politely. I don't argue because I'm glad she's in a good mood, and anyway, the smell of the drink is enough to make me queasy again. She takes a sip from both cups, then sets mine down next to the head of a drunk, sleeping on the sidewalk. Good morning, she says, shaking him by the arm.
Angel,
the man calls after us. And she does look sort of floaty. It's because the pants are too long on her, and she has a light step. Mae would have things to say about it. I hear her voice in my head. Too light, she says. But so what? And who asked her? I take the celery stick out of Charlie's Bloody Mary and crunch down on it, hold it for him as he takes a bite too. I realize after crossing the street that Mom isn't with us. She's standing on the edge of Jackson Square in front of a man playing the accordion. I watch her from the other side of the road as she sways to the music with her eyes closed. The man finishes the song, and she keeps swaying, not seeming to notice that the music has stopped. Is she... Charlie starts, but trails off. The accordion player starts the next song. A family pauses to listen, looks at Mom, then moves along. Should I cross back and get her? Mom finally stops swaying mid-song and opens her eyes. She looks startled when she sees us staring at her, as though she can't quite place us. As soon as she crosses the street, I take her hand. Should we go up to the river? I say quickly to change the subject and smooth things over so she doesn't have to be embarrassed. Up on the levee, we find a place in the grass and take our shoes off to dangle our feet in the water. A barge full of orange shipping containers floats by. This is the spot Mom used to take us when we were little, near the bend before the ferry terminal. The water level is high today, I guess because of all the snow melting up north. Last time I was here, it was much lower. This part was all rocks. I've missed music, Mom says, scrunching her face for emphasis. Oh, music remembers it better. Remembers what? I start to ask her, but she turns to Charlie and takes his hand. Thank you, she says to him. He blushes a little and tries to say the word sure, but gives up. She watches his mouth as he does this, and her mouth twitches silently along with his. For a moment, I'm seeing her real, unguarded face, and she's showing it to him and not to me. Of course, this makes me jealous. It's stupid, but it does. Mom must sense something, because she lets go of his hand and turns to me. Are you having a good day? She asks. I say, of course. Because I am, really. It's stupid to be jealous. I'm happy just to be with her again. And then I say, really good, so that she'll know that I mean it.
We can go see some music tonight,
Charlie offers. She nods, but she's not really there anymore. Her eyes close. Something is hurting her. Maybe my hangover is contagious. I massage her temples. She smiles like she's tolerating my touch. It's all right, she says. It'll pass. Charlie moves my hands out of the way and does these strange cupping gestures, moving his fingers over her face without touching her.
Is this helping?
He says. I can tell it isn't, but she nods her head, yes. It's the medication they had me on. Missing a dose gives you headaches. It makes me want to cry, the idea of them pumping this poison into her. Of course, she's been acting a little strange, but who wouldn't be? Charlie and I are both staring at her. She opens her eyes and puts her hands on each of our shoulders. I'm fine, she says. I'm fine, and kisses our foreheads with her dry, chapped lips. Then she lies across our laps. I get her head, and Charlie gets her legs. She really is our baby. I stroke her face and watch the boats float down the river. A fishing boat, a ferry, a cruise ship.
Do you want to go swimming?
Charlie asks. I shake my head. You can't hear. I rip a handful of grass and throw it in the water. He doesn't look convinced. I'd say more, but then the calliope starts playing in the steamboat. God, that sound. Joy itself.
What is that?
Charlie asks, squinting at the steamboat. That, I say, is the ghost ball. Remember the ghost ball? I ask Mom, poking her in the shoulder. She smiles faintly, but keeps her eyes closed. That's what she'd told Mae and me when we were little. Can't you see all the men and women in their fancy dresses dancing on the river? She'd say. Look at them waltz. And then her eyes had moved over the water, like she was really seeing them. And for a second, I would see them too. Pirates and outlaws, and ladies with big powdered wigs.
Charlie. Edie's mother was frankly a little repulsive to me, and yet there was something hypnotic about her. Marianne would talk in this odd way, talk at me, making it clear I didn't matter at all as a subject, and then something would shift, and it would be electrifying. This moment of connection. I don't know quite how to describe it. It must have been part of the mental illness. The boundaries around things and people would shift, would be revealed briefly as being illusory. I understand why. If I were a person who made art, I would have found her compelling. As it was, though, I found being around Edie's mother barely tolerable. She was always coming on to me. One night, I slept in the truck because she wouldn't stop fondling herself and me as Edie slept on the other side of the room. I didn't tell Edie that her mother was doing these things, because it would have hurt her, and she would have blamed me for it. Her mother could do no wrong in Edie's eyes. Her mother's suffering was so huge it was like its own person. It needed to be constantly fed and tended to. I don't know what it would have done to me to grow up with a mother like that. My parents had always been so in control of all their faculties. Seeing Edie with her mother made me only love Edie more. To still be so protective and sweet.
Mae. Dad finished the book, and my fever finally broke, though I didn't get better. Still, to celebrate, Dad took me to Coney Island. What an odd place to take someone who was in the midst of a psychotic break. Though, of course, he didn't know this was happening to me. Didn't want to know. I remember being on the Ferris wheel with him. The sun had just set, and the lights of the fair glittered below. Amanda was in the gondola behind ours. She was always nearby. I could smell her even from that distance, the spongy smell of rotten meat. The Ferris wheel stopped when we got to the top. Amanda waved at us. Dad waved back. He was trying to seem cheerful. I stood up and leaned over the edge. The ocean below looked like it was made of tar. The night felt like a swarm of insects. How had I ended up in this nightmare? We could dive in the ocean and swim to the edge of the earth. Nobody would know who we are, I said. Maybe the voice was mine. Maybe it was Mom's. I couldn't tell anymore. We could run away together. Dad yanked me back into my seat by the hem of my shirt, hard enough to make the whole gondola swing under us.
Stop it, Mae,
he said. He said my name constantly now, as though it would be enough to remind me of who I was. I want to be with you, I said, and started to cry. He pressed me into his chest.
Poor Mae, he said. You are with me.
No, I wailed. I'm not really. I knew that he had stopped loving me. He was done with his book and done with me.
I'm right here.
He tried to soothe me. No, I cried. You know that's not what I mean. I want to be with you. I bit his chest through his shirt. I want to be your wife. I would do anything you wanted. I was a wild animal, and he was trapped with me 100 feet up in the air. He had to restrain me, finally, using his knees. It must have been horrible for him to create me, and then lose control of the narrative in this way. Amanda. Dennis told me he thought that book was his most potent work to date, and I don't doubt this. I saw the intensity of feeling that went into writing it, even if I never got to read the actual manuscript. What an enormous honor it was to be in the room when he finished it. I had just brought him his lunch, and I got to watch him type the last word and take the sheet out of his typewriter. He seemed shocked. He let out a whoop. I'm done! He twirled me around, pulled me onto his lap. Oh, how we celebrated. To finally possess him, to hold his life force inside of me. It was magnificent. I don't think we could have had such a meaningful physical relationship if I had not been given the opportunity to show him the depths of my devotion. Writing that novel seemed to have purged some darkness from him, and he was suddenly available to me in a way he never had been before. I was so swept up in our newfound happiness that I'm afraid I was not clear-eyed enough about his daughter. I was too cautious because of what happened last time when he'd sent me away. I tread too lightly, and as a result, I failed to manage her. She was determined to gain her father's attention at any cost. The histrionics. The dramatics on the Ferris wheel. She was jealous that her father was finally happy with a woman who loved him. I found it all very irritating, but it seemed like teenage girl stuff. I assured Dennis it was just a phase, and we both wanted to believe that. Edith, 1997. The three of us are inside the Spotted Cat on Frenchman. On stage, there's a man crouched on top of his white bass as he plays it, a girl on the fiddle, another on the washboard, the accordion man from earlier, but now he has a painted-on mustache, and a fat man with breasts on a horn. Every time the fat man blows, his face turns deep red and his chest jiggles. Mom pulls Charlie and me onto the packed dance floor. Charlie is shy at first, but Mom starts spinning him, and now he's spinning me, a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. Yes, 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 yes. Everyone around me blurs into one ecstatic mass. Then Charlie spins Mom. You can see the dark sweat stains spreading as he lifts his arms, and Mom's hair has come loose from its little ponytail. She grabs him by the shoulders and shakes, 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 sweat from her face flying onto his. I don't remember the last time I saw her dance like this. Sometimes in the kitchen with Mae and me when we were little, and maybe at Doreen's. Her face looks so intense now, like she is more alive than anybody else in the room. Aren't you glad? I want to scream over the music. Aren't you glad to be alive? Of course she is. She grabs my waist and dips me. I'm taller than she is, and I nearly topple over, but Charlie catches me and spins me again like a top. I collide with an old man in a three-piece suit, dancing with an umbrella. He holds the umbrella over me, even though we're indoors. All right, he's shouting over the music. He does a two-step around me. We're in the center of a circle that's forming. Go, Uncle Lionel, go! People are shouting. He's ancient, but he can dance. I try to keep up, but I can't quite. He makes a flirty face at me, and I start laughing. He's probably 100 years old. People clap. A woman closer to his age cuts in, and they both hold on to the handle of the umbrella and circle around it. Is Mom seeing all this? Where did she go? I look around for her and try to catch my breath. Oh, it's so hot in here. A tall woman stoops down to let a short guy light her cigarette, and over her shoulder, I spot Charlie leaning across the bar, ordering something from the bartender. And there's Mom draped over Charlie, her arms circling his chest. Is she all right? What's wrong with her? She buries her face in his back, and he's talking to the bartender as if she's not even there. I watch her blow on the back of his neck. What has he done to her? I try to push my way towards the bar, but a drunk man with slicked back hair grabs onto me for balance. Get off me! I try to slip out from under him, but he leans his full weight against me. What's your name? He slurs over the music. His breath in my face makes me want to vomit. I shove him, and he topples onto someone else. I move past them, squeeze between two fat women dancing, and almost collide with a guy with a goatee, standing on a bar stool, photographing everyone from above with a camera. By the time I get to the bar, it's just Charlie. Mom is gone. You want anything? Charlie asks when he sees me. He must think I'm a real idiot. No, I don't want anything, I say back to him. Where's my mom? He looks hurt about the stuttering, but not as hurt as he would if he didn't deserve it. Edie, what's wrong? He puts his hand under my chin. Really? This is unreal. I jerk my head away and knock his drink over. Ice and vodka spill down his shirt and over the bar. Where's my mom? I repeat. He thinks he can take advantage of my mom? That I would let that happen? He thinks I would let him do that? She just came out of the hospital. That sick fuck. I can't look at his stupid quivering face. Everything is starting to darken around the edges with rage. Hey! The bartender is on our side of the bar now, pulling me towards the door. I don't need to see your ID. I know you're underage. Charlie is following us. I break free and run back to the bathroom. A black door with a picture of a pinup girl. Mom! Mom! I shout. A woman comes out of the stall, but she is not my mom. The door swings open, and the bartender grabs me by the arm and yanks me back out. Don't touch me! I go dead weight, but he lifts me. I kick whoever is in my way. I'm looking for my mom, I shout to him, but he doesn't care. He deposits me outside by the bouncer. I don't know how she got in, the bartender says, but you need to do your job. I try to slip back in again, but this time the bouncer takes hold of my arm. No, ma'am, he says. I'm looking for someone, I say. He acts like he didn't hear me. He cards a group of old women who giggle as they show their IDs. Charlie is hovering beside me, but I ignore him. What if she's looking for me in there? I press my face to the window, but it's hard to see through the steam, and it's so packed.
Edie, Charlie's saying. Edie, talk to me. Nothing happened.
That's what he thinks I care about? I don't care. If she wanted him, he's all hers. If she chooses him over me, that's fine.
Where is she?
I finally say.
Where did she go? I don't know, he says. I thought she went to find you.
Did she? Is she in there looking for me? She'd forget Mae and me sometimes. At the mall, you had to stay close.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I feel something is wrong.
I know something is wrong. It's how I felt when I opened the front door before I even saw her hanging from the rafter. I put my hands on my knees and double over. I try to catch my breath. Taking her out of that hospital was a mistake.
You have nothing to be jealous of. I didn't do anything.
I bat Charlie's hand away. I don't care, I say. Go back and find her. He disappears inside. I wait. The bouncer lights a cigarette and watches me pace back and forth. You all right? The bouncer finally says. I shrug. Of course not. I'm so stupid. On the dance floor, the intensity on her face, that was not happiness. It was something else. I'm so stupid. It's like when Doreen's mama suddenly sat up and started talking to us, and I thought it meant she was getting better, but it didn't. She died right after. Eventually, Charlie comes back out.
I couldn't find her, he says. I start to cry.
Keep looking, I say, even though I know she isn't in there. Don't touch me. I stand upright.
Maybe she went back to the house, he says. I swear to God, Edie, nothing happened.
Of course something happened, I scream in his face. She's gone. Candace Vance. Yes, I remember them. A woman, a man, and a girl had started staying in the shotgun next door in late May. That house had been empty for a while, so I was glad to have them there. It gave me something to do, something to be curious about. You lose your curiosity, and you might as well be dead. That's what I'd always tell my late husband. He was not curious. I can't get out much on account of the diabetes. It's hard because of my legs. On Sundays after church, the gals come by. But otherwise, looking out the window and calling into the radio is how I stay tied to the world. I'd see the new neighbors and think, is this some kind of love nest? Are they bank robbers? They seemed like they were hiding something. I don't know if they were in the house legally or not, since the for sale never went down, and I never saw a moving truck. They weren't there very long before I got a knock on my door, sometime after midnight. I was old then, and now I'm ancient, but I still remember everything perfectly. It was the girl. I'd waved at her from the window, and she'd waved back, but this was the first time we spoke. It was an odd time of night for her to come introduce herself, and she looked like she'd been crying. She wanted to know if I'd seen her mother. I had not. I'd been sitting by the window all evening, hoping to see somebody, so I'd have noticed. I asked the girl what was wrong, but she wouldn't say. She asked to use my phone. I set her up in the kitchen with the yellow pages. I didn't have long distance, so I insisted on dialing the numbers for her. The first number she had me call was a loony bin out in Metairie. The loony bin didn't have her. The woman had not seemed crazy to me, but who knows? My Aunt Jenny had seemed normal enough, too, until she stabbed everyone at the hat shop where she worked with her sewing scissors. The girl used my phone for a long time, had me call everyone in the phone book, it seemed like, all the hospitals and hotels. I told her, why don't you wait? Your mother probably just went for a walk. It's a nice night. Through the open window, I could tell it was a very nice night. I told her mother probably just needed to be alone. Why all the panic? Why the doom and gloom? She said she needed to call the police. Then I tried to take the phone away from her. I said, listen, why are you getting the police involved? What are they going to do? Arrest a woman who went for a walk? Sometimes mothers need their space, too. She's an adult woman. That's when the girl got rude. She wasn't interested in my wisdom. She grabbed the phone away from me and called the police anyway. And what did they do? Just as I predicted. They told her there wasn't a thing they could do until the woman has been missing for 3 days. Of course, the police did eventually get involved. A nice officer, young, practically a schoolboy, came by. He said his people were from Plaquemines Parish, which was where my late husband was from. He asked me some questions. I wish I could have been of more help. I never saw that woman again. I saw the girl and the man a few more times from my window, but they didn't wave back, and they disappeared soon after the house was bought by a very nice couple, Mr. and Mrs. Perez. He's of Spanish descent. Lovely people. May. One afternoon, a few days after that trip to Coney Island, Dad and Amanda left me in the apartment by myself. I don't know where they went. They probably weren't gone long. After Coney Island, Dad was never alone with me, and never too close physically. Amanda made sure of this. It seemed impossible that a person could want something as much as I did and not get it. And yet, here it was happening. I was pacing in the apartment, asking myself what I had done wrong. My eyes weren't working properly, and I kept running into things as I paced. When I opened a book to calm myself, I found its pages incomprehensible. The words and letters had been replaced with scratch marks from Amanda's talons. Her stink was everywhere in the apartment. It made me retch. I knew that I would be sent away soon. Dad and Amanda were probably out arranging it at that very moment. I would rather die. The only way I've been able to make sense of this period in my life is by making art about it. I use dolls and build sets and hire actors to read the voiceover. Some of the movies I make cleave closer to fact than others, but all of them are emotionally honest. Each film tries to recreate my subjective experience, to share what it was like to be consumed by this love for my dad. My piece, Conflagration, sold to the Whitney in 2008. It was part of a triptych with 2 other films, one in which I recreate the experience of going to the horse track with my dad while pretending to be my mother. Another is a fantasy in which my dad and I finally consummate our relationship in the bird sanctuary in Central Park. And as a result, in an Escher loop twist, I am conceived. Conflagration is a recreation of the fire as I remember it. In the first shot, I am a doll, standing alone in the dollhouse apartment. It's quiet. I'm wearing a dirty yellow shirt. The light coming in through the kitchen windows is also yellow. I run my hands over the formica table and say, goodbye. The books stacked underneath. Goodbye. The chairs. Goodbye. The carved tea box. Goodbye. The teapot. Goodbye. With my doll hand, I trace the parallelogram of light on the countertop. Goodbye. I move on to the living room. I touch the couch. Goodbye. The coffee table. Goodbye. The cat made from actual cat hair. Goodbye. The piano. Goodbye. I drag over the piano bench so I can reach each shelf of the bookcase. Goodbye. 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 My doll fingertips are dusty. Cronus twitches his tail slowly as he watches me. I open the hall closet and pass my hand over the coats, the scarves, the hats, all knit for this film. Goodbye. I crouch down and touch all the shoes. Goodbye, shoes. I go into the bathroom. I touch Dad's toothbrush. I touch Dad's comb. Goodbye. Goodbye. I try the handle to a locked bedroom. I try it again. Nothing. I stand for a moment with my hand on the knob. My doll lips moving. Goodbye, they say soundlessly. My face is pale and damp. A strand of hair is stuck to my forehead. I take 2 steps back and slam my weight against the door. And again, and again, and again. Finally, a cracking sound. The door swings open. The camera follows me as I stumble towards an empty bed and sit there for a long time, catching my breath. The window is open. A slight breeze rattles the blinds. I am so pale. Where is my dad? Why has he left me alone in this state? The light outside is fading, grayish blue. Now my doll face is mostly shadow. I run my hands over his pillow, over the nightstand and the empty bottle of whiskey. All these things are recreated precisely and painstakingly to scale. On his desk, I touch the empty glass with the tiny, dried-up wedge of lime, the typewriter. I reach under the cushion of his chair and take out the key. I open the drawers and touch everything in them. Goodbye, I say out loud to the little gold-plated binoculars. Goodbye, I say to his manuscript pages. Goodbye, to the photos of either Mom or me. I wasn't sure. I arrange all these things neatly in a circle on the little bed. The room is dark now. I'm just a silhouette as I take the box of matches off the windowsill. Wooden matches. Strike anywheres. Dad would light them off my zipper like a magic trick. I climb onto his bed, into the nest I've made, and strike the match against the headboard. It sparks. A tiny leap of yellow. Slowly, I move my arm in a circle, and the pages ignite. I don't do this because I'm angry. Not at all. Do you know what Joss paper is? On one of our earlier walks, Dad showed Edie and me a store in Chinatown that sold paper objects. Paper cars and paper suits and paper jewels and paper cats and paper dogs and paper vases and so on. It's for Chinese funerals. People burn these things as offerings so that the deceased can have them in the afterlife. That's why I burned Dad's book. It isn't spiteful. No, I just want company on the other side. I want him with me. I lie down on my back, fold my arms over my chest. There is a crinkling sound as the paper around me begins to burn. The flames are jumpy in the breeze from the open window. My face glows like I am lying on a birthday cake. Smoke rises off the duvet. The pages curl, turn to ash, drift into my dull mouth. They taste like our kiss. The mattress squeals when it heats up. My hair sparks and shrivels. My shirt catches like a curtain. My face, look at it, red and soft as it melts. It's very loud, the sound of the fire. And through it, I can hear Mom's voice. Hush, hush, go to sleep, she says, as she lowers her long braid down my throat until I choke. Edith, 1997. I spent all night walking around the quarter, retracing our steps, looking for Mom like she was something I dropped. But the whole time I was feeling the pull of the river, and finally, I let myself come here. Why have I been resisting it? This is where she went. I can feel it. I'll stumble on her, asleep on the riverbank, her hair spread out over a rock like it's a pillow. Someone far away is singing. I'm at the industrial canal. A thick fog hangs over the water as the sun is beginning to come up. I can't see more than a few feet in front of me. The air is slowly changing color from purple to gray. The song sounds familiar. Because I've got a bulletproof heart. I've got a bulletproof heart. Mom, I shout, even though I know it's not her voice. It sounds like a black woman. Which side of the river is she on? I can't tell if it's near or far. Is she on the river itself? I hear the water splash against the embankment. Mom, is that you? I shout again. The singing stops. I'm at the edge of the river. Don't believe that I am, no. The voice is feminine, but I think it belongs to a man. I hear the slap of a paddle on the water. The prow of a metal rowboat emerges from the fog a few feet away. The person on the boat has a crooked wig and dress on, but also an Adam's apple and a stubbly chest. Sorry, I say. I thought you were my mother. Interesting, the man in the wig says, this time in a deeper voice. I haven't heard that one before. Have you seen a woman out here? I picture her in the boat with him. He has taken her somewhere, ferrying her across to the afterlife. I'm being stupid. She has black hair. The man shakes his head. Can't say that I have, child. Something about the way he says it feels off to me. He starts to push away with his oar, but I lean forward and grab the front of his boat. You sure you haven't seen her? I say. Sure, I'm sure. Maybe I imagined it. His face looks completely blank now. His makeup is smeared on the side he must have slept on. I let go of his boat. Good luck, he says, and disappears into the fog. Doreen. As soon as I heard Edith's voice on the phone, I knew there was trouble. What now? I thought. I'd just gotten home from working a double. My feet were swollen so bad I had trouble taking off my shoes. Edith asked me if Marianne was at my house. What do you mean? I didn't understand what she was talking about. Marianne was in the hospital. I wondered if Edith was beginning to lose it too. First, she appears out of nowhere. Then she disappears without a word, runs off and doesn't even tell me. We found her clothes, she said, in a pile by the river. The clothes she described were not Marianne's. I couldn't make sense of what she was saying until finally she told me the whole story. The story of her stupid albino boyfriends trying to be a hero and them thinking they could play house. What did you think was going to happen? I kept asking her. She'd been the one to cut her mother down from the rafter. What did she think was going to happen this time around? I said her boyfriend should be arrested for what he did. But then I thought about it. What good would that do? Marianne got what she wanted. And the Mississippi? It's not the worst way to go. The hospital administrators are the ones who should be arrested. They hadn't even notified me. Who knows how long they were hoping to keep this quiet. Edith told me that she didn't think her mother had drowned. Maybe she went for a swim, she said. Like the river we were talking about was denial, and not the Mississippi. You don't go for a swim in the Mississippi. Not down here. Not in June. Not with the riptides. Marianne knew that as much as anyone. People drowned in that river all the time, and quick. Then Edith started talking about some drag queen in a boat and how Marianne hadn't left her shoes. I'd had about enough. You think she got naked and hitchhiked on a boat with her sneakers on? Maybe she went for a walk, Edith said. Maybe she's in Alabama by now. Go back to New York, I said, and hung up the phone. I didn't have anything else to say. She must have known as well as I did that her mama was dead. I knew the call would come about Marianne sooner or later, and I was prepared for it. Well, as prepared as you can ever be for something like that. When we were girls, Marianne told me a story about walking from my house to hers at night through the pasture. It's the Lakeview Plaza now, but then it was a pasture. And she said that she heard someone next to her, someone breathing. It was probably a horse, I said. They left them out to graze at night sometimes. No, she said, it wasn't a horse. Well, who was it then? I was expecting her to say it was a boy from her class, or the town drunk, someone a little dangerous who might have tried to bother her. Not who, she said. What? It was death. Death? Well, then why aren't you dead? Oh, she said, it just wanted to let me know that I'd been marked. Everyone's been marked, I told her. All of us. God, I thought she was dumb sometimes. It was just like her to think dying was special. Dying is not special. Everybody does it. But then, why does it always feel like such a surprise? No matter what, no matter how marked, no matter how much everybody's expecting it. At least she's finally at peace. I thought about organizing a second line. It would have pleased my mama, and I think Marianne would have liked that too. But then my brother died right after, and I didn't have it in me to deal with arranging anything. It was also complicated by the fact that her body was never found. The current swept it out into the Gulf of Mexico.